The three of us, me, Sarah, and Liam, were inseparable. A trio forged in the fires of shared ramen noodles and all-night gaming sessions during our college years. I'd met Sarah first in a chaotic freshman orientation line, and Liam shortly after in a particularly brutal philosophy seminar. We just clicked. Our bond tightened over countless road trips, disastrous cooking attempts, and a mutual love for classic horror films. Liam, ever the dreamer, was the reason for this trip. He was a self-made millionaire by 30, a tech genius who'd sold his startup for a ridiculous sum. Unlike many, success hadn't changed him. He was still the same grounded, slightly goofy friend. This deep woods camping trip in Oregon, a digital detox to his vast fortune, was his idea of a perfect escape, a way to reconnect with nature before diving into his next big venture. Sarah and I, always ready to support him, agreed without hesitation. We'd driven 2 days, leaving the highways for winding, unpaved Forest Service roads until the cell signal died completely. Our chosen spot was beside a pristine, secluded stream, a place Liam had found on an old, almost forgotten map. The entire day was a blur of sun-dappled bliss. We hiked to a hidden waterfall, its roar a constant, soothing backdrop. We skipped stones across the stream, fished for trout, and mostly failed, and laughed until our sides ached. The kind of pure, uncomplicated laughter that felt like a blessing in itself. As dusk painted the sky in streaks of orange and purple, we gathered firewood. Liam, ever the best cook of the three, grilled the meager trout we'd caught over the open flame, while Sarah expertly roasted marshmallows for esmores. The smell of pine and wood smoke mingled with the sweet scent of burning sugar. As night fully descended, around 9 p.m., pulling a velvet blanket over the forest, we settled around the crackling campfire. Liam, ever the troubadour, pulled out his old acoustic guitar, the one he'd bought with his first real paycheck. He strummed a quiet, melancholic tune, the kind that filled the vast silence of the wilderness. Sarah was nestled into my side, her head on my shoulder, eyes fixed on the constellations that blazed brighter than anything you'd ever see back home. It was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Even then, as the fire dwindled to embers, painting our faces in shifting red and gold, I felt a subtle prickle on the back of my neck. A sense of wrongness, a cold draft where no wind should be, whispering through the otherwise idyllic calm. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from the absolute blackness beyond the trees. A sensation that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. This perfect night felt like the calm before a storm. "Hear that?" Liam whispered, around 10:30 p.m., pausing his chords, his fingers frozen on the strings. We all listened, and the unsettling hum was unmistakable. Faint at first, like a woman humming a wordless, hauntingly beautiful melody, carried on the breeze. It was utterly out of place. No cabins, no other campers for miles. "Probably just the wind," Sarah mumbled, but she pulled closer to me, her apprehension mirroring mine. Liam shook his head, his brow furrowed. "Doesn't sound like wind." He was right. It grew clearer, sweeter, weaving itself directly into our minds. A tune that called, that beckoned, drawing you in. And it was getting closer. Then she appeared. She emerged from the thick shadows at the edge of our clearing, just beyond the reach of the dying firelight. A woman, impossibly tall, silhouetted against the fainter starlight, but even in the gloom, her grace was undeniable. Her long, dark hair seemed to flow like a river, and the curve of her body was captivating. She wore what looked like a simple, flowing gown, almost ethereal. Her humming continued, now clearer, more potent, a hypnotic siren song. My mind screamed danger, but my body refused to obey. A strange, intoxicating calm settled over me, mingling with a profound terror. My emotions twisted. A part of me felt a haunting attraction to her ethereal beauty, a pull to simply stare, even as another part shrieked to run. It was like looking at the most beautiful, horrifying abyss. Liam, bless his oblivious heart, started to rise. Sarah let out a tiny, involuntary gasp beside me, clinging to my arm. But I was frozen, caught in the melody, a helpless observer. The woman took a step forward, then another. As she moved, the moonlight caught her lower legs. Not human feet, but hooves. Dark, cloven hooves, stepping lightly on the pine needles, utterly silent. Her eyes, wide and luminous, were fixed solely on Liam. A faint, knowing smile played on her lips as she extended one hand towards him. A gesture of pure, ancient allure.
Liam, no.
Sarah finally found her voice, a raw, desperate shriek that seemed to briefly cut through the spell. The woman's head tilted slightly, her eyes still on Liam, but a flicker of something ancient and annoyed crossed her face. Her humming intensified, becoming a physical pressure in my skull. Liam just kept walking, his gaze unwavering, like he was tethered to her. He took her hand. It looked delicate, pale against his. The moment their skin touched, the humming stopped. The clearing plunged into an unnerving silence. And then she moved. It wasn't a walk, but a glide, impossibly fast. She spun, pulling Liam with her, and in a blur of shadow and pine, they were gone. Just gone. Disappeared back into the impenetrable darkness from which she came. The silence that followed was deafening. The campfire embers seemed to dim even further, leaving us in a deeper, colder darkness. Sarah was sobbing, clutching onto me, her face buried in my chest. I finally found my voice, but it was just a strangled, guttural sound, rasping Liam's name into the void. Nothing, only the vast, indifferent forest. The rest of the night was a blur of pure, unadulterated terror. We huddled together, wrapped in a single sleeping bag, our backs pressed against the cool metal of the car. Every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl, sent jolts of adrenaline through us. We whispered frantically, trying to make sense of what we'd seen, reassuring each other that it wasn't a dream. Sarah would start sobbing, and I'd pull her closer, my own heart hammering against my ribs. We couldn't leave him, but staying felt like an invitation to unimaginable horrors. We watched the tree line, eyes wide, until the sky began to bleed gray. With the first sliver of dawn, around 5:30 a.m., a desperate search began. We called his name, our voices raw with fear, retracing the path towards the stream. And then we saw him, lying motionless, half in the icy water of the stream, half out, completely naked. His skin was unnaturally pale, almost translucent, and covered in small, delicate scratches, like thorns had brushed him. His eyes were open, staring blankly at the sky. We rushed to him, Sarah crying his name, shaking him. After what felt like an eternity, he blinked, his eyes slowly focusing. What happened? Liam rasped, his voice weak. He shivered uncontrollably. He had no memory of the night. None. He didn't recall the humming, the woman, or how he ended up in the stream. It was as if that part of his memory had been surgically removed. We got him back to the car, shivering and confused, wrapped him in blankets, and drove him straight to the nearest emergency room, weaving through the morning fog. The doctors found him physically unharmed, save for minor hypothermia and superficial abrasions. They attributed his amnesia to shock and exposure. But we knew, Sarah and I knew what we had seen. Liam's life, which had previously been thriving both financially and physically, began to take a sharp, terrifying downturn after that night. His once sharp mind, which had built empires, became foggy and prone to strange, detached stares. His financial empire crumbled as he made increasingly erratic decisions, unable to focus or retain information. He became listless, haunted by a void he couldn't name. Doctors, therapists, no one could help him. He was physically present, but emotionally and spiritually, he was a hollow shell. He would often stare blankly into space, sometimes murmuring fragments of the haunting melody we had heard. Our search for answers consumed us for months. Every medical avenue led to dead ends. Every therapy session left Liam more withdrawn. We scoured every obscure corner of the internet, every local library's forgotten folklore section. We chased rumors, followed whispered leads, until finally, a name emerged with consistent reverence and dread. The seer. She was an old woman, living in reclusive quiet on the very edge of a remote reservation town, miles deep into the arid lands of eastern Oregon. They said she had an understanding of the old ways, a gift for seeing what others couldn't, and perhaps abilities that could mend what had been broken that night. The drive was long, the landscape stark and unforgiving. Liam sat in the back, silent for most of it, his gaze fixed on the passing sagebrush as if seeing something beyond it. Sarah clutched my hand, her face drawn with exhaustion and hope. We found the Sears home on a dusty track, a small, weathered cabin barely visible among the sparse juniper trees. A single spiral of smoke curled from its chimney. An ancient woman, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes piercing and dark like polished obsidian, met us at the door. She didn't speak, but her gaze swept over Liam, then over Sarah and me, lingering on our faces as if reading our souls. She gestured for us to enter. The air inside was thick with the scent of dried herbs, cedar smoke, and something else, something primal and electric. Liam, usually agitated by new environments, walked in calmly, drawn to the center of the small, fire-lit room. The seer sat on a low stool, facing Liam. She took his hands, her ancient fingers tracing the delicate scratches on his skin. Her eyes closed, and she began to chant, her voice low and resonant, speaking in a language I didn't understand, but that vibrated deep in my bones. As she chanted, faint, shimmering images began to coalesce in the air around Liam. Ghostly outlines of trees, shimmering water, and then, most terrifyingly, the translucent, beautiful form of the DeerWoman. She wasn't solid, but an echo, a lingering shadow clinging to Liam. The seer's eyes snapped open, fixed on Liam. "She lures," she rasped, her voice surprisingly strong. "She does not kill the body, not directly. She takes the vital spark, the connection to joy, to ambition, to the true self. She feeds on it, slowly. She leaves a shell." My blood ran cold. This explained everything. Liam's decline wasn't just a mental breakdown. It was a spiritual consumption. Can you get it back?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. The seer looked at us, her gaze heavy. "The path is dangerous. What is given willingly, even unknowingly, is not easily reclaimed. Her hold grows stronger with time, as she digests his essence." She paused, then her eyes glinted. "But the spark is still there. Faint. We can try." The ritual began that night. The seer prepared a potent herbal tea, bitter and smoky, which she made Liam drink. He slumped into a trance. She then drew complex symbols on his chest with a luminous, earthy paste, and began to chant once more. This time, the air grew heavy, crackling with an unseen energy. The DeerWoman's ethereal form reappeared, clearer now, shimmering with a dark, possessive beauty, its hooves visible. She hovered above Liam, ethereal but terrifying, humming that same siren song, trying to pull away the last threads of his soul. The seer fought her with powerful incantations, throwing dried herbs into the fire, which flared with unnatural colors. The battle was not physical, but a fierce struggle for Liam's very essence. The humming in the room grew deafening, battling the seer's chanting. At one point, the DeerWoman's form solidified enough for her to extend a hand towards me, her eyes glowing with ancient malice, offering the same alluring invitation she'd given Liam. I felt that same paralyzing fascination, that terrible pull, but Sarah's desperate grip on my arm was just enough to break the spell. The ritual climaxed in a burst of light and sound. The seer let out a powerful, guttural cry, slamming her hand onto Liam's chest. The DeerWoman's form shrieked, a sound that was more raw anguish than any human cry, and then dissipated like smoke, torn apart by the ritual. The silence that followed was absolute. Liam lay still, the symbols glowing faintly. After a long, agonizing minute, his eyes fluttered open. He looked at us, then around the room, then back at us. A flicker of recognition, a genuine spark, returned to his eyes. He slowly pushed himself up. I remember," he whispered, his voice hoarse but clear. "The humming, the woman, And the hooves. He shivered, a deep, bone-rattling tremor. He recalled everything that had happened that night in the woods. The memory, though horrifying, was his. The seer nodded, her breath heavy. It is done. The spark is returned. But a piece of him, a piece of his essence. She touched him. It will always be a part of him. And she was right. Liam regained his memories, his clarity of thought slowly returned. He began to rebuild his life, piece by painful piece. His financial fortunes never fully recovered, the magic gone. But he found a new purpose, a quieter, more grounded life. He never again sought the deep woods, and the sound of humming, even a faint one, would send a shiver down his spine. He was back, but forever changed. A part of him remained connected to that ancient lure, a silent reminder of the price of venturing into places where human eyes weren't meant to see. And Sarah and I, we became guardians of his story, and a little piece of that chilling fascination remained with us too. We learned that some misfortunes aren't just bad luck, but ancient hunger, and some places should remain truly, utterly unknown.